Shabbat Shalom. I just want to welcome everyone to the Sabbath Day conference call. This is Barbara serving as your host today. And today, Brother Craig is here as your co-host. And the title today is The Battlefield of Worship. And this is Israel's history of rebellion. And the history of rebellion is all about worship. So today we will be reading from Ezekiel 20, the New Living Translation. Brother Craig will be reading this for us.
All right, Ezekiel 20, the rebellion of Israel, starting at verse 1. On the 5th month, during the 7th year of King Jehoiakim's captivity, some of the leaders of Israel came to request a message from Yahuwah. They sat down in front of me to wait for his reply. Then this message came to me from Yahuwah. Son of man, tell the leaders of Israel, this is what Yahuwah Elohim says. How dare you come to ask me for a message? As surely as I live, says Yahuwah Elohim, I will tell you nothing. Son of man, bring charges against them and condemn them. Make them realize how detestable the sins of their ancestors really were. Give them this message from Yahuwah Elohim. When I chose Israel, when I revealed myself to the descendants of Jacob in Egypt, I took a solemn oath that I, Yahuwah, would be their Elohim. I took a solemn oath that day that I would bring them out of Egypt to a land that I discovered and explored for them, a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the best of all lands anywhere. Then I said to them, each of you, get rid of the vile images you are so obsessed with. Do not defile yourself with the idols of Egypt, for I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. But they rebelled against me and would not listen. They did not get rid of the vile images they were obsessed with or forsake the idols of Egypt. Then I threatened to pour out my fury on them to satisfy my anger while they were still in Egypt. But I didn't do it, for I acted to protect the honor of my name. I would not allow shame to be brought on my name among the surrounding nations who saw me reveal myself by bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. So I brought them out of Egypt and led them into the wilderness. There I gave them my decrees and regulations so they could find life by keeping them. And I gave them my Sabbath days of rest as a sign between them and me. It was to remind them that I am Yahuwah, who had set them apart to be holy. But the people of Israel rebelled against me, and they refused to obey my decrees there in the wilderness. They wouldn't obey my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. They also violated my Sabbath days. So I threatened to pour out my fury on them, and I made plans to utterly consume them in the wilderness. But again I held back in order to protect the honor of my name before the nations who had seen my power in bringing Israel out of Egypt. But I took a solemn oath against them in the wilderness. I swore I would not bring them into the land I had given them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the most beautiful place on earth. For they rejected my regulations, refused to follow my decrees, and violated my Sabbath days. Their hearts were given to idols, to their idols. Nevertheless, I took pity on them and held back from destroying them in the wilderness. Then I warned their children not to follow in their parents' footsteps, defiling themselves with idols. I am Yahuwah, your Elohim, I told them. Follow my decrees, pay attention to my regulations, and keep my Sabbath days holy, for they are a sign to remind you that I am Yahuwah, your Elohim. But the children too rebelled against me. They refused to keep my decrees and follow my regulations, even though obedience would have given them life. And they also violated my Sabbath days. So again I threatened to pour out my fury on them in the wilderness. Nevertheless, I withdrew my judgment against them to protect the honor of my name before the nations that had seen my power in bringing them out of Egypt. But I took a solemn oath against them in the wilderness. I swore I would scatter them among all the nations, because they did not obey my regulations. They scorned my decrees by violating my Sabbath days and longing for the idols of their ancestors. I gave them over to worthless decrees and regulations that would not lead to life. I let them pollute themselves with the very gifts I had given them, and allowed them to give their firstborn children as offerings to their gods, so I might devastate them and remind them that I alone am Yahuwah. You say, we want to be like the nations all around us who served idols of wood and stone. But what you have in mind will never happen. As surely as I live, says Yahuwah Elohim, I will rule over you with an iron fist, in great anger and with awesome power. And in anger I will reach out with my strong hand and powerful arm, and I will bring you back from the lands where you were scattered. I'll bring you into the wilderness of the nations, and there I will judge you face to face. I will judge you there just as I did your ancestors in the wilderness, after bringing them out of Egypt, says Yahuwah Elohim. I will examine you carefully and hold you to the terms of the covenant. I will purge you for all those who rebelled and revolt against me. I'll bring them out of the countries where they are in exile, but they will never enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahuwah. As for you, O people of Israel, this is what Yahuwah Elohim says. Go right ahead and worship your idols, but sooner or later you will obey me and will stop bringing shame on my holy name by worshipping idols. For on my holy mountain, the great mountain of Israel, says Yahuwah Elohim, the people of Israel will someday worship me, and I will accept them. There I will require that you bring me all your offerings and choice gifts and sacrifices. When I bring you home from exile, you'll be like a pleasing sacrifice to me, and I will display my holiness through you as all the nations watch. Then when I've brought you home to the land I promised with a solemn oath to give to your ancestors, you will know that I am Yahuwah. You will look back on all the ways you defiled yourselves and will hate yourselves because of the evil you have done. You will know that I am Yahuwah, O people of Israel, when I have honored my name by treating you mercifully in spite of your wickedness. I, Yahuwah Elohim, have spoken.
Okay, and the battlefield of worship continues today. We heard about Israel, we've heard about it our whole life, and is it continuing today? Yes, it is. The cosmic conflict. The true cosmic conflict spanning the millennia is over worship. The Battle of Armageddon is but the final campaign in the long-running warfare, which started when Lucifer boasted that he would sit on the Mount of Congregation, the Mount Moadim. The very word Armageddon reveals the nature of this battle. It is an unusual word, used only once in Scripture. Armageddon, Har Moadim, is the same Mount Moadim which Lucifer claimed he would possess, sitting on the Mount of the Congregation, receiving all worship. This is the climax of the entire conflict, and it is fought, as always, on the battlefield of worship. Immediately after the whore riding the beast is identified as Mystery Babylon the Great, a fourth angel appears, repeating the warning of the second angel. This time, the warning is given powerfully with a strong voice. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and Yah has remembered her iniquities. Revelation 18:1-5. By using the counterfeit calendar of the hidden God, all nations have drunk of the wine of Babylon. No one is left out in this severe indictment. However, the offer of mercy is still lingers, and the invitation is given to those whom Yah tenderly calls my people. The heart of infinite love desires that his people have a clear understanding of the issues so that all who will may choose to follow him. The calendar reform needed today is a return to the true biblical timekeeping. Sabbath reform necessitates calendar reform. The biblical timekeeping system. And this is a quote from the Jewish Encyclopedia, page 410. Sabbath and new moon, both periodically recurring in the course of the year. The new moon is still, and the Sabbath originally was dependent upon the lunar cycle. So this is the calendar in the heavens. It is dependent on the lunar cycle. It is not a man-made calendar. Israel's repeated apostasies were centered around false worship, including the worship of Saturn. Modern Israel, both literal and spiritual, has continued in that apostasy. Isaiah 24:5. They have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. The Sabbath was established by the Creator himself as the sign of loyalty to his kingdom. Surely my Sabbath you shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yah that sanctifies you. You shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death. For whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. Work shall be done for 6 days, but the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Yah. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Therefore, the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yah made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Exodus 31:13-17. Sabbath restoration. At the heart of it all, however, is a return to true worship by restoring the ordinance that has been forsaken. Restoring worship to the true seventh-day Sabbath by the genuine biblical calendar. It is the last generation that is given the high calling of restoring the Sabbath to its rightful place, standing before the world, sharing this wonderful truth. Isaiah 58:12 says, "Those from among you shall build the old waste places, You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach. And so, as we know, Psalms 19:1 says, the heavens proclaim the glory of Yah, and the skies display his craftsmanship. So to access more information about Yah's calendar, the calendar he gave Israel, the calendar that is still in effect today for us, please go to our website, lunarsabbathday.com. And I want to thank each one of you for being here today.